Welcome to WhiskyCast, cask-strength conversation featuring news and interviews from the world of whiskey. I'm Mark Gillespie. This is episode number 878 for July 5th, 2021. Coming up in a few minutes.
We harvest the barley, dry it here, and we send it away to be malted and bring it back as and when we require it. We've also got our own water source, obviously the borehole on site, so all the raw materials are here. And from my own point of view as distillery manager, creating that spirit has been another very exciting project for myself.
Lochlea Distillery in Ayrshire has been keeping a low profile since it opened 3 years ago next month. But the farm distillery is now coming out of the shadows as it prepares to release its debut single malt later this year. Scotch whiskey veteran Malcolm Rennie is the distillery manager. David Ferguson is in charge of the commercial side. And they'll join me later on WhiskyCast In-Depth. I'll also have the What I'm Tasting This Week department, Behind the Label, July's Whiskey Club of the Month, and
the whole thing's different. New retail experiences, loads of new innovative technologies within our experiences as well. So yeah, the whole thing's new, so it's really exciting.
The news is next on this week's WhiskyCast.
Hey, Gabriel Cardarella here from Dewar's Blended Scotch Whiskey. I'm excited to share with you that Dewar's is the most awarded blended Scotch whiskey in the world, and that's worth raising a glass to. So grab a bottle today and enjoy this week's episode of WhiskyCast.
And now, a message from Robin Redbreast.
Small batch. How would you describe it? It's like an Irishman's understanding of baseball. Extremely limited.
Proud sponsor of WhiskyCast. Redbreast. Pass it on.
Let's get started with the news. The COVID-19 pandemic is still out of control in many parts of the world, and South Africa has now banned alcohol sales again for the fourth time since the pandemic began. The current 14-day ban is scheduled to last until at least early next week. Government officials say it's designed to reduce the demand on hospitals caused by alcohol-related emergencies. As of now, South African distillers and winemakers are still allowed to export their products overseas. Irish whiskey has been one of the fastest-growing segments of the global whiskey market over the past decade, but even it could not overcome the impacts of the pandemic. The Irish Whiskey Association released its 2021 Global Trade Report Thursday. Worldwide sales fell about 5% last year. That's largely because of the collapse of the travel retail market due to pandemic-related travel bans. It ends a string of annual gains for Irish whiskey sales worldwide, dating back to at least 2010. Though the positive news out of the report is that sales growth continued in many key markets, including North America and Europe, while strong growth was also seen in Asia and Pacific Rim countries. Export sales are critical for Irish whiskey. The domestic Irish market only accounts for about 4% of annual sales. One of the biggest attractions for whiskey lovers visiting Speyside is open once again. The Glenlivet opened its all-new Visitors Center Thursday with a complete redevelopment of the Visitors Center over the last 18 months. Lindsay Gray is in charge of the center's tours and tastings. We talked on Friday via Zoom.
We're still in part of the original Maltons that were here before at Glenlivet, where the previous visitor centre was, but it's been completely turned on its head. So the whole thing. So currently I am in our new bar, which used to be our coffee shop cafe. So this is been completely changed into a brand new bar with cocktails, we've got some of our capsules. You'll see the cabinet behind me. This has got some of our rare and exclusive vintages as well. So some whiskies that we no longer produce in bottle anymore, but we've managed to keep some behind, just hidden away in cupboards and things. So yeah, the whole thing's different. New retail experiences, loads of new innovative technologies within our experiences as well. So yeah, the whole thing's new, so it's really exciting.
Did you keep the Chandelier with the Glenlivet bottles?
We didn't. I'm sorry, it's gone. It's gone. So yeah, the Chandelier has left the building, I'm afraid. But downstairs, that exhibition space is now part of our new experiences. So it's part of our original tour, our entry level. So we have replaced a bottle Chandelier with a field of barley from one of our local farmers. So yeah, we went back to the original basics of whiskey making and celebrating the community.
So what happened to the Chandelier? Are we going to see it on eBay somewhere?
Well, I don't know if it's hidden away in one of the builder's back gardens. You never know, Mark.
Winchester took it to his house, I'm sure.
Yeah, well, you never know. He's popped in every now and again, and he seemed very keen to... we got him to sign 300 bottles the other day, and he seemed very keen to do it. So you never know if he's they're maybe at home and he just feels guilty about it.
So I have to ask, and obviously there's no good that comes out of the pandemic, but the fact that things were shut down for the last year pretty much gave you the chance to do all this without having to have a big impact on visitor traffic, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's been such a strange year. I think it feels like, so this is our second day open in the new space, and I think we've done more openings and closures over the past year than we have in the past 25. So opening yesterday just felt like a natural thing for us, just moving into a new space and just kind of refinding your feet almost. So yeah, it's been strange, but it's been quite nice to kind of have that, just kind of easing into the space and being able to spend a lot more time with people. Glenlivet's always been, one of those distilleries that it's had lots and lots of people through the door. So this year has been so strange for the staff because it's kind of made everything slow down a little bit. So it's been nice to enjoy the space, kind of get the feel for it, and kind of people are coming through the door and you're getting to spend so much time with people. So you say it is one of those things. It's such a huge impact on everybody, but it's made us kind of treat how we do everything so differently here at Glenlivet as well. It's just made us realise, no, you need to spend more time with people. We can take only 6 people per experience, so it's completely changed the entire way that we deal with things. And I think the entire refurbishment really reflects that whole concept. The whole concept is that kind of wanting to recreate George Smith's home, really bringing people in as you would bring in your own family. So it's given us that real opportunity to do that as well.
You mentioned the capsules, the controversial cocktail capsules.
The controversial capsules.
This is the only place people can try them now, unless they figured out the recipe to make them themselves.
Well, I hope they haven't figured it out for themselves, because that would ruin things for us. There are a few places you can get. They are testing them out in markets at the moment, but it's only at like private events you can try them. So you can't purchase them, but we've integrated them into some of our experiences. So, for example, the Innovator experience, which we're hoping to launch later this year, we're hoping that we're still working with the distillery team closely to regain production process. So we've got a capsule integrated into that, because it's all about how George Smith innovated and his entire Smith family were innovating and really challenging not only the Glenlivet area and Speyside, but the entire whiskey industry, and seeing that way of pushing the industry forward and kind of doing that whole thing of, we know we're good at this, but we know it can be better. We know there's a different way of doing things. So the capsules for me really reflect that, just trying something different, trying it a new way. So yeah, we got the staff. They arrived a few weeks ago, and we had a little tasting with the staff a couple of days ago. So we've been able to put them in a couple of our experiences. So we're so excited to get people to kind of try them and see what everybody thinks here at the brand home.
There's one other big change with the opening of the new Visitors Center. In past years, the Glenlivet was closed to visitors from the end of October until the following April each year. Now it'll be open year-round, with a short break starting Christmas Eve until after New Year's Day. Back in May, we reported on the Skinner auction for what's being billed as one of the world's oldest bottles of whiskey. It's an Old Ingledew whiskey that could be from the late 1700s, according to a single carbon dating test. The auction closed on Wednesday with a final hammer price of $137,500. There's no word on the identity of the winning bidder. That bottle was originally thought to be from around the 1850s, and the runner-up in the bidding at Skinner's gives us an indication of what it might have gone for otherwise. A bottle of Murdoch whiskey circa 1863 sold for just under $41,000. There are many whiskey competitions around the world, too many to report all of the results for, but we did get the results for two major ones this week. The Ultimate Spirits Challenge, led by F. Paul Packolt and his team of judges, handed out their 2021 awards this week, while there were 56 Chairman's Trophy winners across various whiskey and spirits categories. I'm only going to mention a handful, specifically 6 whiskeys among the 10 spirits that scored either 98 or 99 points across the board from all of the judges. At the top, Kilchoman's Mackir Bay Cask Strength Single Malt. It was the only one with a 99-point average. The 98-pointers, Old Fitzgerald's 2020 16 years old bottled in bond bourbon, Redbreast 12 cask strength, Talisker 18, Mortlach Distiller's Dram 16 years old, and the Glenturret Peat Smoke 10 years old. Meanwhile, only one whiskey was among the 6 spirits to score 99 points from the judging panel in this year's International Wine and Spirits Competition, and it came from MGP in Indiana, the Redemption Barrel Proof High Rye Bourbon, bottled by Deutsch Family Wine and Spirits, which also won the U.S. Whiskey of the Year trophy. Kavalan's Podium Single Malt from Taiwan won the Worldwide Whiskey Trophy. That category includes whiskeys from Ireland, Canada, and elsewhere other than Scotland and the USA. The Matisse 21-year-old won the trophy for blended Scotch whiskies. Glenglassaugh's Octaves Batch 2 won the trophy for no-age statement single malt scotches. Speyburn 15 won the trophy for single malt scotches 15 years and younger. Bunnahabhain 25 small batch won for single malts 16 to 25 years old. And Tomatin 1978 won the trophy for single malts 26 years and older. We have posted links to complete results for both competitions in the show notes for this episode at whiskycast.com. Meanwhile, Douglas Lang & Company is relaunching its double barrel range of blended malts. The concept dates back several years and pairs 2 barrels of single malt whiskies from different regions of Scotland. Back then, the distilleries were disclosed. For instance, blending a barrel of Glenrothes Speyside single malt with a cask of Ardbeg from Islay, or Highland Park with Bowmore. Now the first 2 new double-barrel bottlings pair an Islay malt with a Highland malt and a Speyside malt with a Lowland malt. They'll be available at whiskey shops with a recommended retail price of £45 each. That's about $53 and change at current exchange rates. The Lakes Distillery has launched its latest Whiskey Makers edition from Deval Gandhi. It's a one-off edition called Miramar. It'll be available exclusively through Master of Malt with just 600 bottles available. The price tag, £80 each. In the U.S., New Hampshire-based Tamworth Distilling is known for its unique whiskeys flavored with things like venison and the extract from the anal sacs of beavers. But its latest release is positively conventional, a straight corn whiskey honoring the writer and philosopher Henry David Thoreau. It's called the Mellow Fellow Corn Whiskey and went on sale Saturday at the distillery. There has been no comment from Heaven Hill on the name. Of course, Heaven Hill makes mellow corn whiskey and has been known to send its trademark lawyers racing to the courthouse at speeds that would make Olympic sprinters jealous. On that note, if you think the Scotch Whisky Association is a bit overprotective about the use of Scotch whisky terms on whiskies made outside of Scotland, well, the SWA is pretty relaxed compared to France's champagne makers, who go positively bat-merd over any sparkling wine not made in France's Champagne region that dares to hint at even being champagne-like. Just imagine the volcano erupting in France now after Russia's Vladimir Putin signed off on a new law that decrees only sparkling wine made in Russia can be sold legally there as champagne, and everything else has to be called sparkling wine. According to the drinks business, the French have said niet to that idea and have suspended shipments of champagne to Russia. Opposition politician Gennady Gudkov suggested Putin might not be done with that idea. He didn't rule out a similar decree targeting Scotch whisky. The SWA may have an army of lawyers, but Putin has a real army at his disposal. You can keep up on the latest whiskey news all week long at whiskycast.com. Don't forget to join us Fridays at 5 p.m. New York time, 10 p.m. UK time, and 2100 GMT for our Happy Hour live webcast each week. You can catch the fun on the WhiskyCast YouTube channel, our Facebook page, Twitter, and Twitch. Time now for the calendar of events, brought to you by Catoctin Creek Distilling. Castle and Key Distillery in Frankfort, Kentucky, has its monthly Springhouse Music Series night this Wednesday night. Art Begg's Monsters of Smoke tour buses will have stops in Indiana and South Carolina over the next week or so. Tickets are still available for Thursday night's Center for Culinary Culture Spirited Dinner in Los Angeles with John Distillery's founder Paul John. The Whiskey Rebellion Festival is this coming Saturday in Washington, Pennsylvania. Whiskey Live Brisbane is July 16th and 17th in Brisbane, Australia. The next Virginia Spirits Roadshow is coming up on July 17th in Hampton, Virginia. That same day is also Sagamore Spirit Distillery's next Whiskey on the Waterfront Day in Baltimore, and the next Catoctin Creek Bottling Workshop at the distillery in Purcellville, Virginia. Right now, we have 178 live and virtual events on our searchable calendar at whiskycast.com. The calendar is brought to you by Catoctin Creek Distilling, makers of the Virginia Rye Whiskey. You'll find their Roundstone Rye at fine whiskey shops in 26 U.S. states, 3 continents, and online. Visit the Where to Buy page at catoctincreekdistilling.com to find a retailer near you. And please drink responsibly.
And now, a message from Robin Redbreast.
People never forget the person who introduced them to Redbreast. And then those people go on to introduce others to Redbreast, and soon the flock has grown exponentially. It's like a pyramid scheme. Without any of the bad stuff, of course.
Proud sponsor of WhiskyCast.
WhiskyCast In-Depth is brought to you by Oban and the Classic Malts lineup. Lots of distilleries have opened in Scotland over the last decade or so. Most get headlines when they open up, and then we wait several years for them to release their first mature whiskey. That is not the approach Lochlea Distillery in Ayrshire took. When it opened back in August of 2018, there were no big announcements, no promises to change the world, no visitors center to build awareness while its early production matured. In fact, the family-owned distillery went largely unnoticed until just recently, quietly growing its own barley on the Lochlea Farm and turning it into whiskey, with industry veterans leading the production and commercial sides of the business. Now they're getting ready to release the first Lochlea single malt whiskey later this year. Malcolm Rennie is the distillery manager. David Ferguson heads up the commercial side. I spent some time with both of them on a Zoom call the other day. Let's go back a few years, because the Lochlea story really doesn't start until 2014 when you guys decided to build the distillery, but this area's history with whiskey goes back a lot farther, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Malcolm was here before me, so he's
yes, sorry.
To start off with that one.
Sorry, yes, about the area in general. Ayrshire. Yes, it's a Burns, but it's a farm, and yes, it's definitely a farm where Robert Burns lived from 1777, yes, in his younger years, the informative years. And he obviously worked the land here. And obviously that's one of our great USPs for this project is that Burns actually worked this land, and we're now working that land, producing barley from it, which you're now turning into fantastic spirit, yes.
Yeah, I think it's also, Mark, this is, it's one of the things, I mean, we put out a press release a few weeks ago when we finally put our head above the parapet, and we mentioned, we're making fantastic spirit here. Here's the plans for the distillery, and the one thing that everyone seemed to pick up on was the Burns angle, which is nice, but it's probably on the list of things we want to be known for. That would come after the being known for great whiskey. So yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, our owner is out harvesting those same fields that Burns himself worked on. So it's a cool story, but we hope it's an afterthought for Lochlea.
Well, when you're starting a new distillery, you have to have something unique to get people to pay attention to you, and that certainly is it. So let's talk about the whiskey, since that's what you want to be known for. What makes this one unique?
Unique in the fact that we're only using barley grown from the farm. So the whole process from start to finish is well, apart from the malting, of course. So what happens is we harvest the barley, dry it here, and we send it away to be malted and bring it back as and when we require it. We've also got our own water source, obviously, the borehole on site. So all the raw materials are here. And from my own point of view as distillery manager, I mean, creating that spirit has been another very exciting project for myself. I've done a few in the past, I must admit. I don't know, I've been involved in Kilchoman and Annandale previously to here. So the whole whiskey making thing, designing the whole distillery from scratch, right through from the planning permission, and I think planning actually came through, outline planning, at the end of 2015. From then, I came on board as a consultant for Neil, the owner, and basically designed the whole distillery plant along with Forsyth to give us a style of spirit which Neil wanted to produce. So yes, it's been another great journey, and up till now, we've had really good feedback for the spirit from everyone else who's nosed it or tasted it. So again, very satisfying for us as a whole team. You mentioned Annandale and Kilchoman, but your history, Malcolm, goes back a lot further. For those who aren't familiar with it, give us the CV. You started out a long time ago, right? I started a long, long time ago, yes. My father was a cooper, and he actually took us to Islay in 1974. To Bunnahabhain Distillery initially, but my father then moved to Bruichladdich, where I eventually started working in 1987. Spent a few years there, and then moved on to Ardbeg Distillery for another spell of time, and then eventually that took me to being the distillery manager and starting up Kilchoman in 2005. And from there, also, I carried on then to Annandale, and then subsequently onto Lochlea. So, yes, I like to think I've been making whiskey for a long time, and I would hope I know what I'm doing, yes. What did you learn from those experiences that helped you get Lochlea online? I think basically just the attention to detail is the main thing. I mean, making sure that everything's correct from the very start. You do get problems, and it's what you do to overcome those problems. So from that perspective, I can honestly say that Lochlea, commissioning-wise, from the start of the whole project, really went without a hitch, and just everything really worked in conjunction with Forsyth for the plant install and the commissioning. Everything just worked exactly the way I wanted it to, and obviously that carried on through into the spirit. Obviously, we're a a portion of time where we slightly tweak and adjusted things, with new stills, all that, to get the stills activated. And eventually we'll come to the actual precise spirit that we wanted to produce. And I think everybody agrees that I think we've all done a really good job with that.
Give us a sense of what that spirit is like.
That spirit is very smooth, very fruity, very accessible, which is what Neil wanted. We really want to create a spirit that lots of different people will enjoy, from beginners to very experienced whiskey drinkers. So it's lovely. It's very fruity. You've got the green apples. There's a bit of everything in it, really. It's got a slight body to it, so we don't want to try and make it too clean and too fresh, but very fresh, very clean, fruity. Hint of there's almost a slight minty sweetness to it at the end of it. So yeah, very accessible, and I'm sure that everyone will enjoy it.
How does it compare to the expectations for a lowlands style whiskey? For years, basically, all we had to go on was Bladnoch for that part of Scotland in the lowlands. And it seems like a lot of distilleries have popped up over the last decade or so in the lowlands. Is this the start of a new lowlands style of whiskey that you guys are creating? Or how does this fit in? I
think it seems to be, because we've kind of gone for that early maturing style, as I would call it. So, we run our process with very clean worts, and we use two particular types of yeast, a long fermentation time and a kind of high narrow cut point. So, there's other distilleries doing that, but everyone does it slightly differently. So yes, you're right. There will be similarities between all these new ones, but we're all slightly different in their own way, I think. I think the thing for us is that we use our own barley that we have on site, and that contributes to our own unique flavour profile, I think.
Does that also make you more vulnerable if the weather is bad one year and the barley doesn't grow?
Yeah, you're 100% correct. Yeah, that is a danger that we have. Yeah, so that's something we have to be mindful of and have a plan B, so to speak. So we are in touch with some other local farms round about who also might be in the same position, I suppose, but, it gives us another option.
David, give me a sense of what it's been like trying to bring a new Scotch whiskey brand online during the last year during this pandemic and get it ready for release this fall.
Yeah, good question. So it's been very different to how it would have been if we'd done this process pre-March of last year. First of all, we've done a lot of, as we're doing right now, these online sessions. I like going out and seeing people and physically handing over a sample and discussing it and getting feedback. So that part has been taken away to an extent. But I think the big thing for me, and Malcolm, by the way, is being modest here with the spirit that we have. We've hit something quite special. So for me, when you get the feedback, even though it might be sent through the post rather than face to face, people within the industry are really getting quite excited, which again gives us that buzz and the energy to go and get the whole marketing side sorted and get it bottled and out there. So it's been different challenges, but I think we're getting there. And we weren't. Up until very recently, we were very much under the radar, even within. I called Ingvar and said, "Look, we're the only Scotch distillery not in your yearbook here. What's going on?" And he said, "Yeah, you're right. Sorry about that. We'll get in for next year." So we were the best kept secret, I think, in the Scotch industry for a wee while, and rightly, that was intentional. But now we're ready to get the word out there and get people trying the whiskey.
Where will this initial release be available, and how much of it will you have?
So we're already in conversation with a lot of UK retail, some wholesalers here. We're speaking to a number of markets that we've targeted to begin with. So we want to find the right partner in each of those. Probably about 8 to 10 to begin with, but then we'll expand from there. You'll appreciate, Mark, we're a relatively small team right now, so we would rather be in some key markets and really build the brand there and go after it, and then we can look elsewhere. I think if we spread ourselves too thin early on, it makes it difficult to really support the brand in that area. So yeah, long way of answering your question, but yes, UK is our home market. Clearly that will be a big one for us, and we have some fantastic relationships already with the key retail partners here. And then beyond that, we're already signing up some distribution agreements in Europe and in your side of the water as well.
How have the trade issues between tariffs, Brexit, and everything else affected your ability to get export deals?
Yeah, good point. So with the US, we've been quite lucky in the timing. That's obviously things have changed in our favour recently on that. Actually, it's been probably more of an issue over here in Europe with the whole Brexit situation, which has really slowed up shipping times and made it more complicated than it really needs to be for us to get goods into different European countries. So on your side of things, on the US side, I actually think we'll be okay. It's more countries that are not too far from us that become trickier with what's happened in the past couple of years.
What is the overall goal here? Are you guys looking at world domination of the whiskey market, basically filling a niche? What's the overall 5 to 10 year goal for Lochlea?
So Malcolm and I might have different answers, so I better be careful. But from our perspective, I think we have an ambitious plan to grow over the next 10, 15, 20 years. World domination would be great. I think for us, we understand where we are in terms of scale and how we think we can fit into the market. So there are certain distillers out there that we know very well from our network and that we respect. So Malcolm mentioned Kilchoman, which he set up. They have found they've found a good part of the market. Springbank have a long history, but have a very they've got a good setup, and they do things in the right way. So that even Francis at Daft Mill is on a smaller scale, but he's doing things the right way. Everything 100% is focused on the quality of spirit, and I think other things then take care of themselves. So yeah, I think for us, if we can carve out that niche of being known for as a really top end single malt whiskey coming out of Lochlea and naturally falling into that whole traceability trend, which is happening right now. You can come on our site, you can literally walk through the barley field, you can then walk straight over to the still house, and the next step you're in the warehouse where we mature. So everything is happening here. So yeah, I think we have some good stuff going for us, but we do fully appreciate that there are other great whiskies out there, so we won't take anything for granted.
Not to mention, well, let's talk about other whiskeys for just a second. Malcolm, if you had to, and I can't make this comparison, so I've not tasted Lochlea yet, but what single malts would you compare it to in terms of flavor for those who are looking at this for the first time and going, okay, brand new distillery, what's it going to taste like? Are there any distilleries in Scotland that are comparable in terms of taste and profile?
I suppose some of the newer ones would be very similar. In fact, a lot of the similar processes, and some of the Jim Swan factor included. As you well know, Jim was involved in quite a few of the new startup distilleries. So I think there will be quite big similarities, or slight differences, in my opinion. Funnily, one whiskey that maybe not a lot of people have tasted that I would possibly compare a lot with Lochlea would possibly be something like Rosebank. It's a light, smooth, fruity thing, but with a slight bit of body to it. So not overly light. It's got all that lightness but with a slight body to it, possibly without the grassy side of it. So I would hope if it was comparable to the Rosebank, I'd be delighted. Obviously, yeah.
That would be a great legacy to build on, or a great comparison to make for the future, given the legacy of Rosebank.
Mm-hmm.
What are you working on for the future? Obviously, this initial release is going to be putting your flag in and establishing the distillery. But where do you take the brand after that in terms of different aging, different casks, things like that?
So we have a plan over the next 18 months or two years, Mark, for beyond that initial release, which for us, I mean, you know what it's like. It's the inaugural bottling is always, there's demand there, and we want to make sure that gets into the right hands, people that will support our brand long term. But I think that aside, what we want to do next year is bring out early in 2022 our core single malt from Lochlea. That and the recipe or the cask profile for that, Malcolm is putting together right now. And then we'll release batches, maybe 2 or 3 during the year, not too many, but we want to showcase the spirit in several different ways. So whether that's one of the 12, 13 different cask types that we have maturing on site, or we've got the option of going a peated variety there. We'd like people to be able to try our ongoing Lochlea single malt that they can get, and that can be their go-to dram. But on the other hand, they can then wait for, okay, next month we can try this same spirit. Because for me, I mean, the exciting part for me about this is that we're not saying to people, try this in lots of different ways. They're actually on the journey at the same time as us, because we hope that and we're sure that it will be good, but we don't even know what our spirit will be like in some of these cask types this time next year. So it's quite, I mean, it's good on both sides. We can showcase it, we can get feedback, and then we can sort of plan ahead for the next 5-10 years until we get our age statements.
You mentioned flying under the radar, David. How important is tourism going to be in terms of building this brand? And what do people say when they happen upon this distillery that they've never heard of, and they're going, wait a second, Lochlea, I don't know that one, but they want to see a tour and they want to visit the place?
Yeah, good point. So I think the whole visitor centre side of things took a back seat last year with everything going on. Right now, our focus is just, as I said earlier, 100% on this new this first release, and then the core single malt. But certainly we're set up. I mean, we have, and I hope you, next time you're over here, Mark, there's an open invite to come and see us. But we are set up for that, so we've got all the right access. We know the route of that tour. Right now, it's just it's probably down our priority list. But you're absolutely right in saying that this region, with the Burns connection, especially I think we're the only area in the world that has 3 championship golf course, 3 open golf courses in the space of a kind of half-hour drive. So there are a lot of people on the tourist side that come here for various reasons. I live here, so I'm biased. I obviously like the area, but there's a lot of good stuff about Ayrshire, and we are, as you said, we are actually the only distillery here. So you can't go in and see, Girvan. Grants is a different beast, and you could go over the water to see Arran, but you can come to us and you feel as if you're in the middle of beautiful Scottish countryside, but in actual fact you're half an hour south of Glasgow and you're 15 minutes to some of the biggest towns on the west coast of Scotland. So it's a strange balance. We're remote but accessible.
You mentioned the owner, but you never said who the owner is. Who does own the place, or are you not talking about them?
Well, the owner's Neil McGeoch, who likes to stay behind the scenes, really, to be honest. Obviously, he's facilitated all this for myself and David to have all this fun and creating whiskey and hopefully selling it. I think one of the big things for me personally is that I want as many people as possible to drink this whiskey. That's why we're making it at the end of the day. We're not really into people collecting things and flipping them and storing them in a cupboard and things like that. We're making this really accessible whiskey, beautiful whiskey that we want as many people in the world to taste and enjoy, really.
Yeah, just to echo Malcolm's, I mean, that is, especially with, I mean, it's difficult to avoid with that very first bottling, but we're making, and Malcolm's
which I have a sample of here, by the way.
Yeah, we're making stuff to for people to enjoy and to share with friends, and to, you know, I like to think we're quite down to earth as a group. We're honest, hardworking people. We want people to actually enjoy what we've made, rather than it just sit on a shelf somewhere or appear on an auction site.
Any special plans for the first bottle that comes out? Are you going to do anything for charity with it? I've seen some of the other distilleries that have sold those first bottles for a boatload of money for charity or something like that. And so I just figured might as well ask.
No, absolutely. We have. I mean, I've seen. Annabelle up at McNean did a really good job of that. Has raised a lot of money. There are ways we could use that to the advantage of, you know, a good cause. Certainly, the main priority for us with that first bottling is that our retail partners and our importers that get that are the ones that we know for the next however many years, we're going to be building a brand together. There's no benefit to us of going to the auction side of things, unless, as you say, it was for a good cause. So we'll try and be smart about it. But as Malcolm said, we want people to drink, to enjoy and share, and hopefully in person when allowed can share this whiskey.
Yeah, you guys don't make it to sit there on a shelf and collect dust.
Absolutely not. No.
By the way, David Ferguson joined me on Friday night's Happy Hour live webcast to answer some of your questions about Lochlea and developing a new single malt Scotch brand from the ground up. Malcolm was to have joined us, but had some internet connection issues out in the Ayrshire countryside. You can watch the conversation on the WhiskyCast YouTube channel. That is WhiskyCast In-Depth. It's brought to you by Bourbon. Every sip of Bourbon is like a postcard. Bourbon Single Malt Scotch Whiskey is offering the chance to immerse yourself in Bourbon and the whiskey-making process through the Bourbon Abode experience. 2 winners will receive a trip to Scotland to stay in the Bourbon Abode, just steps from the distillery. To learn more and enter, visit bourbonabode.bourbonwhiskey.com. Complete rules are available at the website. The What I'm Tasting This Week department is brought to you by Sagamore Spirit. Let's start off with the 2 new Beyond Bonded whiskeys from Whistle Pig in Vermont. And yes, there are 2 of them. First, a rye matured for 4 years and 8 months and bottled at just a fraction above 50% ABV. The nose has notes of dill, anise, brown sugar, molasses, and touches of baking spices. Those spices take center stage on the palate with notes of clove, cinnamon, and a hint of cardamom, along with molasses cookies, toasted oak, and hints of anise and dill. The finish, it's long and spicy. I'm scoring the Whistle Pig Beyond Bonded Rye a 92. The other one, Whistle Pig's first ever bourbon, though not by much, since the mash bill was 51% corn, 49% rye. It's also bottled at 50.05% ABV and was matured for 4 years and 7 months. The nose has notes of leather, tobacco, charred oak, hints of molasses and brown sugar, and a touch of maple that develops slowly in the glass. The taste has spicy notes of clove, cinnamon, allspice, and chili powder, balanced by a subtle sweetness that builds up as the spices start to fade, with touches of molasses, brown sugar, and maple. The finish? Long, warm, and well-balanced. Until now, bourbon makers have not had to view Whistle Pig as direct competitors, but if this is any indication, that is about to change. I'm scoring Whistle Pig's Beyond Bonded Bourbon a 93. I'll have more tasting notes in just a minute, but first, this week's tasting notes are brought to you by Sagamore Spirit Rye Whiskey. They're reviving the tradition of Maryland-style rye whiskey at their Baltimore Farm and Waterfront Distillery. Their tequila cask-finished rye just received a gold medal in the San Francisco World Spirits Competition. It's rye whiskey finished in extra añejo tequila barrels with notes of agave and vanilla, dried fig, and honey, ideal for palomas and margaritas. In-person tastings are available once again at the distillery in Baltimore. You will also find a variety of virtual tours, tastings, and other experiences at the Sagamore Spirit website. They're offering WhiskyCast listeners a free virtual guided tasting. If you buy a bottle from your local retailer, a Sagamore Spirit teammate will guide you through each one. Visit SagamoreSpirit.com and use the code WhiskyCast, all one word, to access. Please drink responsibly. Heaven Hill's second 2021 release of Larceny barrel-proof wheated bourbon gets the code number B521. B for the second release and 521 for May of 2021. It's bottled at 60.5% ABV. The nose is spicy with touches of charred oak, dried fruits, caramel, and honey. The taste is spicy and intense with black pepper and a hint of cinnamon, along with touches of brown sugar and molasses cookies underneath. The finish is long and fades away gently. I'm scoring Larceny barrel-proof batch B521 a 93. And speaking of wheat, Johnny Walker is highlighting the wheat influence on the grain component in its new Johnny Walker blended Scotch. This one is being trialed in the Houston area as a lighter blend with a focus on bartenders using it in cocktails. But even when a whiskey is intended for mixing, it still has to hold up on its own. I received a sample recently. It's bottled at 40% ABV. The nose has notes of toasted bread with orange marmalade and hints of butterscotch, caramel, dried fruits, and fresh berries. The taste has subtle hints of lemon pepper and clove spices with a thick nectar-like fruity character led by peaches and orange marmalade, along with a hint of caramel in the background. The finish long and fruity with just a hint of spice. Given that Houston is traditionally hot and humid this time of year, a lighter whiskey might sound pretty good. I'm scoring Johnny Blonde a 91. The What I'm Tasting This Week department is brought to you by Sagamore Spirit. I'll be adding these tasting notes to our searchable list of nearly 3,200 different whiskeys from all over the world. Check it out this week at whiskycast.com.
After 175 years, Dewar's has learned it's not all about awards. Staying Curious happened to help us fill that trophy case with more than just our amateur fishing, golf, and bowling trophies. It takes time and commitment to make some of the world's most awarded whiskey, which is why every Dewar's whiskey goes through a secondary resting period for a more balanced blend with extra smoothness. From our first master blender, A.J. Cameron, to our current Stephanie McLeod, we've honed our double aging process to make some of the world's best Scotch whiskeys. Dewar's 12-year, for example, was just awarded the double gold at this year's World Spirits Competition in San Francisco. And Dewar's 27-year took home Best Blended Scotch Whiskey 16 years or older. No need to take our word for it. Pick up one of these great whiskeys today. Your palate won't be disappointed.
It's time to announce our latest Whiskey Club of the Month, and congratulations go out to the Cotswold Drambusters in England. Chief Whiskey Officer Colin Shaw sent this email to nominate his club. We started our virtual whiskey tastings in March 2020 during the first UK lockdown, initially as a fundraiser to help launch the new Cotswold radio station. It was so successful that we are now up beyond 50 members, have had 12 tastings covering 72 whiskeys, and have raised several thousands of pounds for local charities in the Cotswolds. At the start, we only had around 5 people that were whiskey drinkers, with all others attending to support the fundraiser. However, it's been great to see everyone go on their own whiskey journey through a bit of education to become avid whiskey fans, with multiple trips to Scotland now being planned for people to go and see the homes of these amazing single malt whiskies. Our tastings have been predominantly single malt Scotch, but we have also ventured into whiskies around the world, as well as the world of blended malts. Many thanks for considering us in your Club of the Month competition. Keep up the great work. You are our go-to podcast for all the new whiskey news. Thanks again, Colin, and congratulations. We'll be sending you 24 WhiskyCast Glencairn glasses to use at your club tastings. Now, if you're in a whiskey club and would like to nominate your club, all you have to do is do like Colin did. Use the contact form at whiskycast.com to get in touch with us. Tell us a bit about your club, and if you have a website or are active on social media, we'll be glad to add a link on our Whiskey Clubs page at the WhiskyCast website. Once again, congratulations to the Cotswold Dram Busters, July's Whiskey Club of the Month, and thanks to Glencairn Crystal for helping us honor whiskey clubs around the world. Let's open up the inbox now for your voice. Had several comments on last week's interview with Edward Slingerland, the author of the new book, Drunk, How We Slipped, Danced, and Stumbled Our Way to Civilization. Matt at the Whiskey Obsessor on Instagram posted this. Just got this on Audible the other day. Great stuff. At Dramming Around on Twitter had this comment. Really loved the last episode. Probably one of my favorite stories so far. I'll try to get my hands on this book ASAP. But not everyone was thrilled with Slingerland's conclusions. Chris Koenig of Golden Beaver Distillery in California emailed this after reading the book. The opening chapters lead you to believe Slingerland was being truthful in his support of distilled spirits in society in his interview with you, until you read in the second-to-last chapter of his book, quote, taxing liquor at a much higher rate than beer and wine, and limiting its sale is also quite sensible. He ignores his own comments on the failure of prohibition throughout history, and taxation is a form of prohibition. He exalts the use of wine, beer, pot, LSD, and other chemical intoxicants, yet throughout the book refers to distilled spirits as more dangerous than natural fermented and undistilled alcohols like beer and wine. If his goal was to create a reference for policymakers dealing with alcohol, he threw distilled spirits under the bus by segregating them from safe alcohols and armed lawmakers with another reference to cite in their legislation proposals. Boy, does my PFC need a dram or two to calm it down. Thanks for the feedback, Chris. During our interview, Edward Slingerland did suggest that distilled spirits might be more dangerous than beer or wine because of their higher strength, and the issue of tax equivalence between spirits, beer, and wine has been a source of controversy within the larger drinks industry for many years now. I shared Chris's comments with Edward Slingerland. Here is how he responded in an email. I don't actually agree that taxation equals prohibition, and I think I still stand by everything I said about distilled spirits. They are wildly more dangerous than beer and wine. I'm still going to keep drinking them because I love them, but it's good to know how to assign relative risk to your behavior. If you'd like to add your comments to the discussion, let us know. And if you have something else you'd like to share with whiskey lovers around the world, you can always get in touch with us on Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram at WhiskyCast. The email address, comments@whiskycast.com. Let's close out the show now with Behind the Label, our look at the history, science, and all those other things that make whiskey unique. It's brought to you by Writer's Tears. And since we were just talking about taxes, 2021 marks the 230th anniversary of the very first federal tax in United States history. Of course, it involved whiskey. Back in 1791, Treasury Secretary Alexander Hamilton convinced Congress that the only way to pay off the federal government's debts from the Revolutionary War was to impose a tax on whiskey and other spirits. Back then, farmers often turned their surplus grain into whiskey to trade for other goods. Cash was not commonplace, and not only were the farmers not crazy about the idea of paying the tax in the first place, but then, as now, the government insisted on taxes being paid in cash. Farmers in western Pennsylvania were particularly upset about this tax. Over the next 3 years, tax collectors sent to the region often wound up being tarred and feathered. And in the summer of 1794, all hell broke loose. Several hundred rebellious farmers attacked the local tax inspector's home, and while negotiators tried to work out a peaceful solution, President George Washington himself led 13,000 soldiers from the Pennsylvania, Virginia, New Jersey, and Maryland state militias into western Pennsylvania to put down the rebellion. There was never a clash, though, between the soldiers and the rebels, since the rebels got word that the soldiers were coming and headed home. 2 men were later convicted of treason and then pardoned by President Washington, including attorney David Bradford. This coming weekend, they'll celebrate the Whiskey Rebellion Festival in Washington, Pennsylvania. The festival grounds is across the street from the historic Bradford House. 8 years later, after Thomas Jefferson was elected president, Congress repealed the whiskey tax. Of course, it would eventually return many years later. If there's something you'd like us to look at on an upcoming episode, just use the contact form at whiskycast.com to get in touch with us. Behind the Label is brought to you by Writer's Tears.
Writer's Tears Copperpot. The tears of Ireland's great writers bursting with flavour, humour and angst. Bottled for you to taste. No writers were harmed in the making of this premium Irish whiskey. Writer's Tears Copperpot.
That's all for this edition of WhiskyCast. You'll find links for the stories in this episode in our show notes at whiskycast.com. That's also where you'll find the latest whiskey news, my tasting notes, the calendar of events, cocktail recipes, the whiskey photo of the week, and, of course, a complete archive of past episodes going all the way back to 2005. Get in touch with us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at WhiskyCast. The email address, comments@whiskycast.com.
And now, a message from Robin Redbreast.
Ever wondered where Redbreast got its name? Well, let's go back to 1912 and be glad our bird-watching founder didn't spot the bar-tailed godwit that day.
Proud sponsor of WhiskyCast. Redbreast. Pass it on.
All right, let's talk about our whiskey collections. Dewar's 15-year-old whiskey is a great addition, especially for those of you who like bourbon. Recently honored with a gold medal at the 2021 San Francisco World Spirits Competition, this 15-year-old has the hardware to go toe-to-toe with any bourbon. Find Dewar's 15-year-old online or in a store near you.
WhiskyCast is a production of Cask Strength Media, copyright 2021, and comes to you from the charming, yet regrettably dry town of Haddonfield, New Jersey. I'm Mark Gillespie, reminding you that when you drink, please drink responsibly. Thanks for listening.